So I'm joined now by HP Ranina, Senior Advocate of the Supreme Court, to just understand the processes behind this. So thank you so much, Mr. Ranina, for speaking with us here on ET Now. First of all, a bit of shock, because this is a very reputed company we're talking about. It's one of the top companies in India, and the charge right now, as per sources from the Income Tax Department, is of showing bogus expenses to the tune of 1,000 crore rupees. What do you make of this situation?
Well, as rightly pointed out, this has to be proved. And unless it is proved, we can't go by any type of, hearsay. So I think we have to wait and see what evidence the Income Tax Department gathers and what is then given to the assessee to dispel that evidence. So it's all a matter of getting the evidence, and to say that 100 crores or whatever figure has been found, and all that is a matter of fact. So really, it's the whole exercise will begin. And while there's a search and seizure, there's a certain procedure to be followed under the income tax law for that purpose. And then a notice will have to be issued to the taxpayer, to the company, as well as to the individual who claims to have spent that money. And in that case, the process will begin, and then it will take about 90 days to complete. The assessment will then be framed if there's sufficient evidence. But at this point of time, it's very difficult to say who's right and who's wrong. I entirely agree with you that this is a very reputed company, and one doesn't expect this of a company of that stature. So we have to wait and see what evidence has actually been collected by the tax department based on the search and seizure which has been carried out.
Stock took a 7-8% hit after this news broke out. Just, Mr. Ranina, to understand the implications of this story being reported today, citing Income Tax Department sources, like you said, it still has to go through any kind of legal process. But the reputational hit has already been made, isn't it?
Yeah, that is normally the case. I don't know how the information leaks out. Normally, this information should be kept confidential unless something is actually been finalized and the assessment order has been framed. But obviously in this country, a lot of things leak out, and whether it's done by the tax department or whether it's done by people around them, normally these things also happen because of competitors who try to, tarnish the image of somebody else, and information therefore leaks out. So it's really very unfortunate, but this is what happens in India. But you're right, the reputation has been tarnished, and this does create a problem for the person who's concerned, who is a victim of this exercise. So let's see how it pans out. We don't know exactly what information has been collected.
No, absolutely. But, the reason we're having this conversation today, Mr. Ranina, is just to get an idea of how this whole situation may pan out or what goes behind it. Now, when the Income Tax Department takes such action against any company, big, small, reputed or otherwise, what really are they looking for? And have there been a lot of instances in the past where companies are trying to evade tax by making up bogus expenses, which is perhaps the accusation in this case?
Well, what the tax department is going to find out is for them to go on the basis of evidence which they unearthed at the time of the search and seizure proceeding. So that has to be put before the taxpayer, and he has to be given an opportunity to rebut that information. Now, on your second point, whether this happens in other cases, it's very difficult to generalize. But yes, there have been cases in the past of bogus expenses being made or inflated expenses being claimed as a deduction in order to reduce the tax liability. So it has been happening, not that it doesn't happen in this country. It happens everywhere, all over the world. But it's all a matter of proof. And therefore, the tax department has a very specific role to play to make sure that the charges will ultimately stick and will ultimately then be, upheld by a competent court. Because when assessment is framed, you have a right to go and appeal, you have the right to go to the court, and then you have to make sure that whatever assessment is framed actually is upheld by the appellate court in proceedings which are launched under the Income Tax Act.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ranina, for joining us and bringing into perspective what could happen next in this very big corporate story that we're tracking.